Now, the last thing I want to talk about are the Houston Texans, man. A lot of you guys are sleeping on the Houston Texans, but it's okay. It's okay because CJ Stroud and Demeco Ryans, they're going to wake y'all up this season. I watched a couple of record predictions prior to starting this episode, right? And there's only one or two people who had the Texans winning more than 6 games this season. And if you talk to a lot of Texans fans right now, a good amount of the fan base expects to win somewhere between 7 to 8 games this year. And a lot of people call Texans fans delusional for having those expectations. But if you really look at Houston's roster and what Demeco Ryans has going into this season, I think their expectations are pretty fair. And I think they have a small chance of being able to win the AFC. And before you say, oh, JT, you tripping hard, man. Remember, I'm the same person who came out on this platform last year and said that the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to win the AFC South. Did I? Did I not? And all you guys said I was tripping then. And guess what happened? The Jaguars won the AFC South. You see, like, a lot of you guys really don't take the time to look into the young assets that the Houston Texans have. Derek Stingley didn't really have a great rookie season because Lovie Smith held him back. You got Demeco Ryans, one of the best defensive minds in the game. He's going to be able to elevate Derek Stingley. Then you also have Jalen Petrie. Like, how many of you guys knew that Jalen Petrie was one of the best safeties in the NFL last year? Raise your hand. Put your hand down because most of y'all are lying. Unless you're a Houston Texans fan, I doubt most of you guys knew how good Jalen Petrie was. I even made a video about Jalen Petrie last year. This guy led Houston in tackles and interceptions. Do you know how hard that is to do as a safety, bro? This dude is like the second coming of prime Tyrann Mathieu, prime Honey Badger. You got Jalen Petrie, you signed Jimmie Ward in free agency. You're going to have Derek Stingley, who's going to have a really good second season under Demeco Ryans. You're going to have Steven Nelson at that second cornerback spot. Your defensive line still has a little bit of improvement that it has to make. This wasn't a team that was good at stopping the run last year, but you were able to bring in Sheldon Rankins, who's going to improve that run defense. You got a really solid tandem of pass rushers. You're going to have Will Anderson, who you traded back up the draft with Arizona 3rd overall. Even though he is changing positions, I'm eager to see how that position change is going to affect them. But I still think this is somebody who should be a 9-sack guy. You have Jonathan Grenard, who in 2021, this was somebody who had 8 sacks. Now, last year, he battled with some injuries, and even when he was on the field, he wasn't all that great. I'm just going to blame that on Lovie Smith, just like how we can blame everything else that went wrong for Houston last year on Lovie Smith because they didn't get the number 1 overall pick. So I'm just going to blame his lackluster 2022 campaign on Lovie Smith. I expect this guy to bounce back in a strong way. You also have some pretty good veterans behind him. Okay, this Texans defense is going to be really good under Demeco Ryans. I expect this to be a top 10 unit this year. That's how good I believe this Texans defense is going to be. Now, offensively, outside of CJ Stroud, who I believe is going to be just as good as Bryce Young, you have some question marks when it comes to the wide receiver position. Now, I don't think that Houston's wide receiver position is in a completely bad situation. It's just that you have a lot of unproven talent in this wide receiver room. Nico Collins still has to prove himself. Okay, he's shown flashes at times, but he's not consistent. You got Robert Woods, who pretty much is on the last leg of his career. He's pretty much an old head. You're going to have John Mechie, who didn't even get to play last year because he was battling, he had Hopkins lymphoma or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but I know he had some form of cancer that kept him from playing last season. He's coming back. You got my guy, rookie wide receiver Tank Dell out of Houston, who I consider to be one of the best route runners coming out of this year's draft class. I think that Tank Dell is going to be the next coming of Wes Welker. I think he's just going to be the milk chocolate version of Wes Welker. You got Xavier Hutchinson. Do you know how good Xavier Hutchinson was out of Iowa State? I mean, this dude was a damn demon. He reminds me a lot of George Pickens, but way more agile and way more explosive than George Pickens. Like, the Houston Texans, although they have an unproven wide receiver room. They have a lot of potential and a lot of talent. And then their offensive line, like, some of you guys probably don't know this, but their offensive tackles, Laremy Tunsil and Titus Howard, they gave up a combined total of 4 or 5 sacks? And I think Laremy Tunsil only gave up 1. And I think Titus Howard only gave up like 3 or 4. That's really good. Like, come on, man. Like, you guys are sleeping on the Houston Texans, dog. Like, you guys really, they had Dameon Pierce, man. I can keep going on with the list of great young studs that they have on this team, man. Like, it's good. I know I'm going to get a little bit of pushback for this take, but it's okay because the Houston Texans, they're going to wake y'all up. This team right now is probably the second most talented team in this division. Indianapolis, you guys know I love my guy Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson is going to prove a lot of y'all wrong, and he's going to end up having a really electric rookie season. But their roster still overall isn't that good. So they're not going to be all that great. They're probably going to be a 4-5 win team, but it's going to be fun to watch them because of Anthony Richardson. The Tennessee Titans, I think they're on the decline. Like, these boys literally went up to their best player and asked him to take a pay cut. And Kevin Byard, despite the fact that Kevin Byard was one of the best safeties in the NFL last year, like, these boys drafted Will Levis. Will freaking Levis, bruh. Their offensive coordinator got arrested for a DUI. And yet, we want to put all the blame on Malik Willis when their offensive coordinator put them in a situation to fail. Like, the Tennessee Titans are doing nothing but going downwards, bro. And even though I do like Mike Vrabel, I don't think the Titans are going to be bad enough under Coach Vrabel to have one of the worst records in the league. But when it comes to determining who's going to be the second best team in this division, potentially behind Jacksonville, I'm going with the Houston Texans. And I think there's a small chance that the Houston Texans can win this division. Jacksonville's defense wasn't that good last year. Although their defense showed up big time in the second half of games, overall, their defense still underperformed at times. And Jacksonville last year was pretty inconsistent. Now, they do get Calvin Ridley. All right, they do have Mr. Sunshine himself and T-Law. But I think there's a small chance that maybe Houston can compete for the AFC South this year and maybe win the division. But overall, I think a lot of people are really sleeping on the Houston Texans, man. Like, I don't know if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan and you're rooting for Houston to suck because you want the second overall pick in next year's draft, but I don't think Houston's going to be bad enough for you to be in a position to have a top 3 pick or maybe top 5 pick. At worst, I think Houston probably is going to give Arizona a top 10 selection next year, at worst. But many of you guys are sleeping on the Houston Texans, man. Like, some of you guys think that Texans fans are tripping for having expectations of winning 6 to 9 games. That is not unrealistic. That is pretty fair expectations for what the Houston Texans are bringing in to this season. This team is way better than what a lot of you guys are giving it credit for. And be honest, bro, how many of you guys were actually watching the Houston Texans last year? Because I wasn't. And I had Dameon Pierce on my fantasy football squad. So, I mean, if I barely was watching the Houston Texans, I doubt you was watching the Houston Texans, bro. Because you don't even know how good Jalen Petrie was. Jalen Petrie was better than Jaquan Brisker, who many people say was the best rookie safety last year. And yet, Jalen Petrie led Houston in tackles and interceptions. He's literally the best player on their defense. And this guy was a rookie last season. And you're giving this man to the Demeco Ryans? You're giving Demeco Ryans Jalen Petrie, bruh? Hey, man, it's okay. Y'all keep sleeping on the Texans. But when they come and they wake y'all up, you're going to come back. You're going to say, damn, JT, like, this aged very well. Just like how you did when I said the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to win the AFC South last year. Come on, man. Y'all got to stop sleeping on the Texans, bro. The Texans are about to wake y'all up. And if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan and you're assuming that you're going to have a top 3 pick because Houston's going to be bad, you're going to be really disappointed. Really disappointed.